want to make sure
I
that
can
we're...
even hear the neighbors talking.
You can.
Did you hear them? Let's go tell them to shut up.
You know, you can hear people talking across the canal better than you can on the
On this
when
side,
they're over
right?
here on this
Just like
side.
our street in New York
We
City.
used to have a woman, I think she still lives over there, but her husband died and she shut up. But she used to talk so loud and she laughed all the time and you could hear her like she was right in the room with you almost.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we're rolling.
All right. Would you like to tell us your full name?
Rebecca Moffett Ortiz.
And the name when you were born, your name when you were born?
Rebecca Scott Moffett.
Rebecca Scott Moffett. And you were born on what day and what year?
February the 14th, 1915.
And
I'm a Valentine.
in what, I know you're a Valentine. And what town was that?
Sanford, North Carolina.
Sanford, North Carolina,
Mhm.
which is,
Beg your pardon?
where is it, Sanford?
It's in the, it's about 200 miles from the coast. I mean, we're in eastern North Carolina. Not eastern,
Western.
not west.
Northwest?
I'm trying to think. I guess it's south, you'd say.
Okay. All right.
And
And
it's all the middle of the state. You know where Raleigh, North Carolina is?
Yeah.
Well, we're about 50 miles from Raleigh.
okay.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
been so long, I've forgotten. I ain't been to Sanford in years and years.
mhm. And what was your father's name?
Royal Herbert Moffett.
Could you scoot your chair here so her eye line is better?
So she looks at you at the camera.
Kind of, but not good.
Okay. Say that again. Your father's name.
Royal, Royal, Herbert Moffett.
And your mother's name?
Maud Matthews Moffett.
Okay. And how old were they at the time when they had you?
I think my mother was 24 and my father was about 26. He
And
was
what?
2 years older than she.
And what did they do at the time? What were?
My father owned a machine shop. It was a family thing that came down from his father. It used to be Moffett Iron Works, and then that was for years, and then he finally sold that. It was sort of a family affair,
Mm-hmm.
and then he sold that and went business for himself and a machine shop.
And your mother?
My mother never worked.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And were you the only child at the time, or did you already have?
No, I had an older sister, and they lost their first baby. That was a boy, and my older sister was Juanita,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the middle one, and then my youngest sister was Eleanor.
And how old was Juanita when you were born?
She was 4 years old.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Was she happy to see you?
I guess so. I hope so.
She didn't say? As you got older, she didn't say if she liked
We
you?
were always real close, all of us.
Okay. And, all right, so you lived in Sanford, and what kind of a house did you live in? Was it a wooden house, a brick house, a stone house?
A wooden house.
A wooden house.
Hmm.
And was it?
Where I was born.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And then
where
we
you
moved
lived?
to another house a few years later when about the time my youngest sister, just before my youngest sister was born.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bigger, nicer house than we had to begin with.
And was it just your parents and yourself that lived in that house, or were there other relatives?
Our family lived there, and I even had 2 cousins that lived with us. Their homes were in the country, and they came to Sanford, and they lived at our house. and went to school there because it was a bigger, better school than where they lived.
I see. All right. Do you remember do you have any fond memories as a little tiny girl? Were there special toys that you liked or special games that you liked to play, or anything special about when you were very
I
little?
used to love to skate.
Really?
Yeah, I won some prizes skating.
But was that when you were a tiny girl or a little bit bigger?
Oh, it was a little bit bigger. I was a teenager
Oh, okay.
then. But you mean smaller than
Yeah,
that?
when you were little.
Gee, I don't remember.
Do you have any memories of when you were tiny? Or things that people told you about yourself when you were tiny? Like things that your sister would tell you about you. Or your mother would tell you
I
about
can't
you.
even remember what I. When
Were
I
you
was,
skinny or sickly, or are you big and healthy and laughed a lot, or?
I was the sickly one in the family, to tell you the truth, and the healthiest looking one. I was always a little bit on the hefty side.
All right. So let's go up to, let's say, around 1920. You're about 5, and you're going to, say, first grade or kindergarten. Was there kindergarten at the
I've
time?
never heard of kindergarten then. I can remember I had my tonsils out when I was in the first grade, and you'd have thought they took my head off. I remember that real well.
Oh, okay. Was that something that they did at school to all the school children, or just you just
No,
remember
I
it
just
for
had-
yourself?
I had, when I was a child, I was asthmatic, and
Really?
I've always had little illnesses like that. I mean, I had
Oh,
trouble
okay.
with it.
Okay.
Like I'm having now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you remember the little school that you went to for
Yeah, I
the
lived
first
real
grade?
close to the school, just didn't have to walk but a half a block to school.
So you did it by yourself, or nobody took you?
Nobody took me because it was a rather small town. And I was so close, and the other kids were always going along. There was always a bunch of us going together.
Yeah. All right. And what did you like? Or do you remember any of your professors, or teachers, or?
Oh, yes. My first grade teacher's name was Miss Addie Sinclair. She was my father's first grade teacher. She was my first grade teacher.
Goodness.
And both of my sisters' first grade teachers. All of us had her. And then they named a school for her when she died.
Addison St. Clair, you said?
St. Clair.
Wow. Okay. And what classes or lessons did you take that you liked a lot from her, or do you remember?
I like in grammar school.
Mm-hmm.
I liked all of them then. I made good grades when I was in school, in grammar school. I had trouble in high school with algebra and geometry and stuff like that. I mean, math was not my thing. But I made good grades in everything else.
Mm-hmm. Did you like, or did you do any art or music or stuff like
I
that?
took piano lessons, and I also took voice lessons,
Oh, you did?
and I won second place in one contest in singing. And now I can't carry a tune at all.
Okay. All right, that was grammar school.
That was in a state contest, and I won a part scholarship for that to college. But I didn't get to go to college. The year that I graduated, I was going to away to college, and the year I graduated, all the banks broke. My father lost everything we had, and
That would have been what year
then
was that?
he went to work for the state, and he got hurt, and he was in bed for 2 years, and nobody in my family worked but my sister, my oldest sister.
Juanita.
for 2 years.
Mm.
But we made it. And then he got much better and lived to be 77 years old.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little more about when, let's say, when you started being a teen and going to school, let's say 9th grade?
Well, music was my thing. I mean, that was what I was most interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I played the piano a little bit. I mean, I got where I could play very well at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I dropped piano and started singing. And that was my main thing that I enjoyed.
So you liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But where would you sing? At school or at special
I was
function?
invited to sing several places, and I sang in church quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the choir at church later.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked me about my younger age, and then I'm jumping to when I was older.
I know. You can't help but do
I mean,
that.
one thing reminds me of another.
Right, right. Now, you said something about the time when your father was out of work and everyone was out of work. Do you remember what year that was? Or what years?
What year it was?
Mm-hmm.
I can't. Joe? I don't remember. What year was it when the banks broke? It was,
29.
29?
and my dad had lost everything.
1928 or
No,
31,
28, 29,
29.
something like that.
So you would have been what?
I was graduating from high school that year. Oh, I can't remember what year. 33 when I graduated from high school.
Oh, okay.
And that's when he really lost everything. I mean, that's when it was, I remember.
So how difficult was it? Did you have to move to a smaller place?
No, we lived in a nice place, and my sister had a pretty good job, and I don't know how we made it, to tell you the truth. I can't really remember. I remember going, I thought it was a treat in the afternoons after school to get a dime to go to the drugstore and visit with all the kids and have an ice cream cone or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then later, everything worked out after my daddy got better, and he did quite well, and
And your sister was able to take care of all of you?
at that time she did. She was working at that time. She was working at the hospital in the office, and later she was in Sanford then, and later we moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and she got a job with Home Federal Savings and Loan, building a loan office, and she retired from that.
Mm.
And by the way, she was still in Sanford, and I got to tell you this because I feel, I saw an ad in the paper about this job, and I answered it and put her name to it, and she got the job. She came to that, called her for an interview, and she came down, and they gave her the job, and she worked there for 20-something years.
Mm. That's sweet.
And she made good money then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was good at that time.
I bet.
And my daddy got better after 2 years, and he went back to work. And he had his own business, and he did quite well. And his business still exists by his name.
To this day?
Mhm.
Goodness.
What's it called?
Moffett.
Moffett Machine Company.
How about that? Okay, so now we've gotten into the early 30s. Let's go to a little bit later. What was happening then in your life?
Since I didn't go to school, I got a job in a department store. And
You graduated from high school.
I graduated from high school in 1933, that year that the
That-
banks,
that
my
everything-
daddy lost everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I went to school, I went to work in this department store, and was finally made a buyer. Well, you remember when I went to New York on buying trips a couple of times? Maybe you remembered. I don't know. You were little then.
Oh, I think I was too little. So you were a buyer for a department store. What was the name of the department store?
The Capitol Department Store.
The Capitol Department Store from
was
Fayetteville?
Main store, I mean, the nicest store in our town.
Okay.
That was in Fayetteville, after we moved to Fayetteville.
Okay. And you were a buyer,
Uh-huh.
and you liked that?
That's what I was doing when I met Joe.
What'd you
Oh,
buy?
I loved it.
What'd you buy?
Clothes?
Lingerie.
Lingerie. Okay.
I
Very
was
good.
lingerie buyer.
Okay, and, all right, so now we're getting close to 1940, 41, right? You still working in the
I worked
department store?
before I went to work in this store. I worked in a jewelry store for 6 years.
Okay,
That was my first job.
all right.
I forgot that.
6 years.
hmm
Then you were the buyer in the lingerie for a Capitol department store,
Yeah.
and how many years was that?
5.
Okay, so that brings you into the 40s, right?
In 39, I was married the first time.
Okay, tell us about that.
I
She
don't
didn't
want
want
to tell you
to.
about that one. What can I tell you? We were married 6 years, and things didn't work out. I had one son, Bill,
Mhm.
and I went back home to live with my father. My mother had died at 54.
I see. What did she have?
She had a fibroid tumor, and had surgery, and then had a heart attack and died. She was
Goodness.
operating on a Thursday and died on Sunday.
And she was 54?
54.
Oh, that's very young.
Yeah. She's been dead 58 years. Bill was 58 years old, and she was 4 months old when she died.
Okay, then
That
after
was-
that, so you went back to your family, your father's, and
To
you s-
live.
to live
My
with.
father and Bill and I lived together.
Oh,
And my daddy sold his house. He had bought a real nice house. And after my mother died, he sold that house, and we moved in a smaller house. And that was the year I met Joe.
and how
Right
did that
after
happen?
We moved there. I was soon after we moved there.
How did that happen?
Well, this girl that worked with me worked for me in the lingerie department. Had met him somewhere. I don't know where or how. I mean, she hadn't met him. She I don't know how it happened, but she had a date with Joe. And
This is
an
still
old
this is
boyfriend
still
of
in
hers.
Fayetteville.
What?
This is still in
In
Fayetteville.
Fayetteville.
Okay.
And a friend of hers that she had known for a long time, had dated before, came back to town and called her, and so she wanted to see him rather than go out with somebody she had never met. And she begged me the whole afternoon to go fill her date with Joe. And I said, no, I wasn't going with somebody I didn't know. But I finally changed my mind. She talked me into it, and I was so glad I went because I met the man of my life.
And what was he like? Oh, you said you didn't.
Well, we went to Fort Bragg and went to the officers club and danced, and I didn't know hardly anything he said, except I remembered that he asked me for a date again real soon, I think the next night or something. So we dated from then on until he left and went back to Fort Benning.
Okay.
So you
And
dated,
then-
and then what happened?
I can't even think what year did we get married, Joe? I can't even think. We've been married 51 years now.
So, had to be.
51.
Yeah, on August the 12th, we were married 51 years. Can't
So it's
believe it.
2001, so it had to be 49.
Yeah, 49. No, 50.
No.
It was 50.
50.
August the 12th, 1950.
Oh, okay.
50.
Got all excited thinking about it and couldn't think when we got married. August the 12th, 1950, we were married in Anniston, Alabama. And my brother-in-law had some friends that he knew in Anniston. And Joe was sent to, Joe, what was it?
Korea?
Where was it you went to in Anniston? What was the name of the fort? Where'd you go?
He wandered off for
I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, he was
Pepe.
sent there on temporary duty, and he decided he wanted to get married then. So I didn't make a lot of money. Where I was working, didn't have much money, and I remember my daddy gave me money, and my sister gave me money, and they got me all ready. And I went to Anniston, and I stayed with these friends that my brother-in-law knew, and they invited me to stay with them until we were married. She had me plan the wedding and everything. We were married in the church. There weren't but 12 people there because we didn't know anybody. And it happened that afternoon my brother-in-law came through Anniston from where he was in the military too, in the Army. And he came by to see us and didn't know we were going to get married. And I asked him to if he would be Joe's best man. And, I mean, if he would give me away, that's what I...
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so he was the only relative I had there. And so just friends of people that we lived with were the only ones that were there.
I witnessed it. Mhm.
Wedding. But it was in the Methodist church. And it was real sweet.
Wonderful. So then,
And then that day he got his orders for Korea. Unexpectedly, he didn't had no idea he was going to get his orders in. And he had to leave in 10 days. And I spent my honeymoon sitting by the railroad tracks in Fort Benning, Georgia. He had to go back to Fort Benning because he was at in Anniston. That's not the name of the camp. That's a town. I can't think of it. Anyway, he had to go back to Fort Benning, and I spent my honeymoon sitting by the railroad tracks watching them load troop trains. And then the day he left, the lady that we were staying with in Fort Benning, we had a room there, and I was going out to see him, tell him goodbye and see him off and everything. And she said, "You're not going out there by yourself. Said, I'm going with you." And she went with me, and we watched the... You want to?
I think
Hold on,
Joe,
hold on. Okay, now we're back.
and you're watching
We
the
were
train,
so rudely interrupted.
the train filled with soldiers pulling away.
Yeah, they gave him a break to come and tell everybody goodbye, and I'll never forget that. And then this lady that went with me said, after they left, she said, "We're not going home." She said, "I'm going to take you out to lunch and try to make you forget all this." And so we went to lunch and then came home, and she and her husband helped me get everything packed. And I drove home the next day to North Carolina by myself, and I cried all the way home. I just stopped, didn't eat anything. I just stopped to get gas, and that was it.
Oh, goodness. It's a
And,
long trip, too.
When I left home, I thought I was gone for a long time, and I was back in a few days.
All
But,
right. So, and then how long
He was
before?
gone 19 and a half months.
It's a long time.
It seemed like
So what did you do
much
for
longer
19
than that.
months?
I was working, and my boss man met Joe when we were going to New York one time on a buying trip, and Joe said he'd like to meet me in New York, and so I asked Mr. Stein if it was okay if he went so that I could see him while I was at nighttime, you know. And that's when I met Mommy and Elva, and you people had just gotten back from Germany. You remember? I don't know if you remember or not. We stayed up with your mother all the time.
But what
Until
year?
we
What year was this, though?
went to Fort Devens
Mhm.
there.
You remember what year it was?
Huh?
What year it was that?
We went to Germany in '56 and came back in '59.
Okay. So you crossed us as we were.
What year did you come back?
I think it was 56.
I know it was close. I mean, you had just gotten back, or you came back right after, before I left or something.
So we were little tiny.
We were all at Mama's
Right,
at
we
the
need to
same
hear about
time,
Kent.
I know that.
Was Kent born?
Hmm.
Somewhere in there, Kent was born.
Joe was back from Korea. I mean, Korea, and he was born in 1953, about 18 months after we got back, I think it was. He was born in March 21st, 1953,
In what town?
at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay. All
What
right.
we did.
So
Tell
then
us about that. Come on.
about.
How she had Kent.
When I had Kent,
Mm-hmm.
well, we had
But she still has Billy.
yeah, I had him, but he lived with my sister and brother-in-law. He stayed in Fayetteville part of the time, but he was with us at Fort Jackson. Yeah,
Okay.
and he was 13 years old when we went to Germany, and Kent was 3.
Wow.
So tell us about how you had
10
Kent.
years between them.
Yeah.
How was Kent?
Was he? Did he like kick her and scream and a lot in your stomach? Was he one of those?
No, and I wasn't
He
sick or
swam around.
anything. That was the only thing that made me sick when I was carrying Kent was gum and toothpaste. And I had a terrible time. I couldn't chew gum to clean my teeth, and I couldn't hardly brush my teeth.
Oh goodness.
That's the only thing that made me sick. But other than that, I felt great. And when I went to the hospital, I went at nighttime, and they put me in a room with another girl that was expecting a baby to come in a minute. And Joe stayed at the hospital a long time, and then he went home because they said they didn't think I was going to have it that night. And the next morning, they induced me, and I had him at 12:15 the next day. And they called Joe to come back to the hospital, and when he came, he just had on his shoes, and they weren't tied or anything. He just slipped in his shoes and flying to the hospital. And he thought he was, and they put me on a ward at the hospital, all the women that had babies, and there were only 3 boys, and I think there were about 20 girls in there. And Joe would stand at the nursery door window all the time. People would come and look at the babies, and they'd bring them to the window for you to see. And everybody'd say, "Bring that pretty one over there." And they were talking about Kent. He was the prettiest one in there, if he was mine. He was so cute.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an exciting time.
Mm-hmm. And then shortly after that.
Wait, we need to hear Kent baby stories.
After what? And we went to, we were stationed at Fort Devens, and Kent started, he was, went to kindergarten, and I think I told you the first day he went to kindergarten, he came home with a note saying he talked too much, and he's still talking, so. Anyway,
But before he went to kindergarten, you guys went all the way to Germany.
Yeah, we went to Germany.
He was about, what, 2 or 3?
He was 3.
He was
And
3
Bill was
and Bill
13.
was 13.
And we went at Christmas time. We spent 2 Christmas days on the ocean going over there.
And how was that?
How does that change? I don't know about the
Was sick?
where we were. I mean, the day, the time changes.
Uh-huh.
And we had a real rough time going over, and coming back was much worse. Everybody got sick coming back.
Do you remember
But
that?
I didn't get sick going over because I had those kids. I could have gotten sick and almost did, but I had to look after them. And they put Bill down at one end of the ship with some other teenagers that were around his age. And I was at the other end of the ship with Kent. And
What
I
was
worried
the name
about
of the
Bill all
ship?
the time. Huh?
What was the name of the ship? Do you remember?
The General Bruckner, wasn't it, Joe? We went on one going over and another one coming back, and I think it was the General Bruckner.
Was it a Navy, military ship?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was real nice, and the food was real good. And it was Christmas time, and we had a Christmas pageant had all the kids in it, and had a real nice time. And I met a lot of people on the ship that I liked, and some of them were stationed the same place I was going to, and we became real good friends.
And where did the ship land?
And where, Joe? I can't even remember. Frankfurt. It was close to Frankfurt. And then he met us there, and we went to Baumholder. That's where we were stationed. We had real nice quarters there, and we were there a short time, not too long.
On
And he
the
was
base?
Yeah. After we got our quarters, but we lived on the German economy for 3 months. And that was kind of rough. But we had one of the nicest places you could have. I mean, just wasn't what we were used to.
What was it like?
Well, we didn't have a refrigerator for one thing. It was cold, snow on the ground most of the time. We'd have to put our milk and all the things that we wanted to keep cold in the window. In the kitchen, there was a big window there. That window was filled just like a refrigerator. And most everybody that lived in this apartment were military people. A lot of them were. And the man we rented from was 80-something years old. And he would come to visit us every single night. And he insisted that he teach me. I was trying to learn Spanish when I went over there. And he insisted that he teach me how to speak German. And he'd come and I'd go to sleep before he'd leave. He would stay and stay and stay. And we'd have to ask him to leave. And next night he'd be right back again. But he was real good to us, and he invited us to, they have fishing over there like they have in New Orleans, the Mardi Gras. And he came and got us, invited us, and we went to all these people's houses where they were having parties. Had a real good time. He was old, but he was a real good dancer, and he liked to have fun. And his wife was just the opposite. She was real stern, and she was real nice to us and everything. Invited us to her house several times to eat and everything. But he was at our house all the time almost. And on my birthday, I'll never forget that he had in our apartment, there was a pair of vases that were in there that I thought were so pretty. And I mentioned several times while I was there, I said those vases were so pretty, I'd like to buy them from him. And he said, "Oh no," we said, "they're over 100 years old. I wouldn't dare sell those." And on my birthday, he and his wife came to my house and brought those vases. Said, "This is your birthday present."
Oh, goodness. Do you still have them?
Yeah, I got one of them. Bill, and some other kids were playing in our apartment and broke one of them, and I glued it back together, and you could hardly tell it. And somebody else broke the other one, so I don't know, but I still have one of them.
That's nice. That's a very sweet story.
And we used to hear from them all the time. They'd write to us after we got back, but they both died a few years after we left. They were both old,
Oh, I see.
but they were real nice people to us.
So you never felt scared over there? I mean, you were in
No.
a different country and
No,
the
I really
military.
enjoyed myself over there. When I left, I thought, gee, I can't be gone from home for 3 years and leave my family. But the 3 years went real fast, really,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of places to go. I went a lot of places Joe didn't even get to go. I went to Holland. I went to, we went to Luxembourg 2 or 3 times. I had a friend that worked in that store that I told you when I was buyer that was from Luxembourg originally.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a real attractive woman, and she gave us her brother's address and told us when we went over to go to see him, and he was so nice to us. And he used to send us cards all the time, and he took us all around the Luxembourg and showed us everything while we were over there. We went to see him 2 or 3 times.
Yes, that's
He was
wonderful.
not too far away. I mean, Luxembourg was not too far away from where we were stationed. We could drive over there and visit and come back the same night.
No kidding. And what kind of a car did you drive?
When Joe told me he was coming home from Korea, he said, "Buy a car." And my daddy always drove a Buick for some reason. That was his car. I mean, he always had to have a Buick. And he had a friend that sold Buicks. And so I told him that Joe wanted me to buy a car before he came home so we'd have transportation when he got home. And he said, "Okay, we'll go see my friend." So we went over and he gave me a real good price on a Buick. And we bought that, and I drove it all the time we were in Germany, and sold it just when we left over there. And it was just about worn out, I tell you. The
Goodness.
roads were bad over there, most of them, and I was always taking somebody somewhere all the time. I could drive when a lot of them couldn't drive that were there.
So
And,
when did you learn how to drive?
Oh, I learned how to drive when I was 14.
Wow, just like me.
My daddy had bought one of the first cars that, when cars came out, and years and years ago, I think that he was about the 3rd person that bought a car. That was his thing, cars. But he always liked a Buick, so I bought a Buick.
Mm-hmm.
Joe and I had 2 or 3 since then.
Okay.
Bought one when we were in Texas. The year he retired.
Uh-huh. So,
But then when he came back from Germany, he got orders to Fort Hood in Texas. And we were there a year when he retired. I think it was a year, maybe a little bit over.
so you were brought back again on a boat?
Yeah, we all came, Joe came back with us on the boat. All of us came together.
And how was that trip?
10 days.
Oof.
Did you fly over when you went?
I think we flew the 2 times.
We went
Oh,
on
yeah.
a ship. Came back on a ship. And it was so stormy and bad, I'm telling you, everybody got so sick they didn't know which end was up. Coming back, it stormed the whole 10 days. We hadn't been out 45 minutes before we got in a storm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was one of the first ones to get sick. I let myself get sick then because Joe was there to take care of the kids, but before I just wouldn't let myself get sick.
Yeah.
But everybody got sick on that ship, just about.
Mm-hmm.
it was rough.
Okay, so you came all the way back to Texas, you said.
But we came back to New York,
To New York, and then,
and then we visited Mommy and all of you, and then we came to Fayetteville and visited my family, and went to Columbia, South Carolina. That's where we were stationed at Fort
Okay.
Jackson, and that's where we lived for 3 years, I think.
mm-hmm.
And then after that, we went to Fort Devens, and that's when Nelsie lived with us. She lived with us. We were there a little over a year, and Nelsie lived with us all the time we were up there.
And why did Nelsie live with you at that time?
Well, Anita and her husband were having her problems, and she was going to send her to a private school. I've forgotten where it was now. And Milton went to another school. And so we told Anita Nelson that she could come and live with us. She did. And you know, I was from the South, and I'll never will forget this. I always said yes ma'am and no ma'am, and never said yes and no to anybody. You know, it was always yes ma'am and yes sir and everything. And so I was trying to teach Nelsie she'd have to do that. We were in Massachusetts, and she came home one day crying, and she said, everybody laughed at me because I said yes ma'am to the teacher. So, and I never will forget that. I wonder if she remembers that.
Probably not.
I'll ask her sometime. But
Here, we gotta stop for a second. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
At that time when Nelsie lived with us, Pericoma was real popular. And every night as soon as we finished eating, she'd go and sit on her knees, turn her legs back underneath their knees, and you've seen her do that, I think. I couldn't sit like that and sing my life. Right in front of the TV. And she listened to every song he sung, and she could sing. She knew the words to all of them. She could sing every one of them, and she'd sing along with him. She just loved Pericomo at that time.
She's already beginning to. She's
And
already beginning to show
That was
her.
when we were at Fort Devens, and then when Joe got orders to go to Germany from there was when Nelsie had to leave. I think she went to, they put her in a school. I don't know if it was good. She was in Goshen or Milton.
No.
One of them went to a private school there. I remember going to see him up there once.
I don't remember.
One of them. I think it was Nelsie. But anyway,
So, where are we now? And where's Kent in all of this? We want to know stories about Kent.
No, we do not. We want to
I
know
told
stories
you he was
about
born
Becky.
in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and in March,
And Fort Devens is in.
huh?
Fort Devens is in what state?
Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That's when Nelsie lived with us.
Mm.
And Kent was born at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. That's where we were stationed when we came back from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And then did Nelsie and Kent get along?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, they got along great. I mean, she looked after him all the time. I mean, he was her baby. She still says Kent's her baby because she really took care of him and a lot. I mean, they were buddies.
They look like little brother and sister,
Yeah,
right?
they
Because
do
they
a
had
lot.
both had little blue eyes, and
Yeah,
I bet people thought they were brother and sister.
yeah. Yeah, they've always been real close. And it snowed all the time. We bought a house at Fort Devens, and the day we moved in, it snowed real hard. And snow was on the ground the whole time we lived there. And every afternoon, when it was about time for Joe to come from Fort Devens, we'd get out with our shovels and shovel the driveway out so he could get in. And
The
that
king
was our
could come
job.
home.
And up there, you didn't have to go to the grocery store but maybe once a week because they brought everything to the door to you. They brought out bread and milk and all the things like that, eggs. And
Those
you
were
could
the
buy right
days.
from your door.
Oh, that's great.
So we'd go to the grocery store on Saturdays, on the weekends when Joe was home.
Mhm.
Oh, we loved it up there, except the weather was too cold for me. I saw too much snow, but we had a lot of real nice friends that lived right around us. We had a good time because they were all in the service too, and we'd have cookouts at night. Everybody'd bring something. We'd cook something outside. And I remember one night we all bought steaks, and we had them in this one person's house in her kitchen. They ready to put on the grill, and they had a dog. We forgot about the darn dog, and we went in to get our steaks. That dog had eaten them. I never will forget that.
Raw.
But
Nice.
we had a lot of fun. We still hear from those people that live. Just had a long newsletter from the ones that live right diagonally across from us.
Mhm.
They live in Texas now.
So after Fort Devens?
Then after Fort Devens, it was, well, that's when we went to Germany. We came back from Germany and went to Fort Jackson. That's where Kim was born. And then Joe retired at Fort,
In Texas.
what was it in Texas? I can't even think.
For Hood.
Fort Hood,
Or Hood.
yeah. And
So, and
and
how
we-
long had Joe been in the service by that time?
21 years. 21 years.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was in the military 21 years. He worked for the city of Tampa for 15 years.
17,
Huh?
13,
17.
17.
16 and a half.
16 and a
And
half.
he was home for 3 months. And we had Nicole here. She was just a baby. Kent and Shelley lived here at that time. And he was looking after Nicole. They called him, wanted to come to work for the sheriff's department. He's been with them now
21.
over 20 years, 21 years, I guess, with them.
Goodness.
So now tell us about your enterprises.
Oh, after I came here, I didn't work all that time. I was married to Joe and we were moving around. I didn't work at all. But I had a friend that lived in Tampa that was a lifelong friendship. In fact, they were older people, that friends of my mother and father's, but they were like family almost. And she had a friend that had a flower shop in Ruskin and one in Temple Terrace, up north of here. And it was also a gift shop. And so she needed somebody in the flower shop down here to go to work. And my friend in Tampa told her to call me and see if I wouldn't like to go because I live so close and if I'd like to come down and help her out. So I went down and I looked. She had gotten a lot of stock in gift items, and that's what she really wanted me for, to hang them on the walls, to decorate the walls, you know, with her gifts and things that she had, and she was working with the flowers. And then so I worked for her a little while getting all the gifts straightened out, and then I got interested in the flowers. She started showing me how to do arranging and everything. And the next thing I knew, I was working all the time with her. We were partners. I bought her out, and I bought half interest in the flower shop, and begged her to let me buy it all, and for her to stay in Temple Terrace because I was doing all the work and she was getting half of the money too. So she didn't want to sell, but finally she did sell it to me. And while I had that shop, Sun City Center opened, and this colonel and his wife lived out there, and they used to come to shop real often, and they were always buying flowers. They were entertaining a lot, and so they said, "Why don't you open a flower shop in Sun City?" And they kept after me till I finally opened one out there, and I had both of them. Then I sold the one in Ruskin, and I had the one in Sun City all the time. And then the person that bought it from me just decided she didn't like it or something. I don't never know what happened. My lawyer called me and told me I better get down to the flower shop that she had left. And so I had to get somebody else to run that shop for me. And I sold it again. And then after that, I liked to work like people and enjoyed it and all. And I had worked in clothes at the Capitol before I started the lingerie and everything. And I just I opened a little boutique here, and I had that 5 years, I think. And then I was working too hard and I had to quit. And I sold it to somebody that I thought they'd keep it. It was named Becky's Boutique. And I thought they'd keep it and leave it that name. And she had been teaching school before, and she decided she didn't like teaching school. She thought she wanted my shop. And she bought it, and she made the biggest mess out of it. She cheapened everything I had in there. I had real nice clothes, and a lot of good customers. Everybody sort of dropped it, and so she went out of business finally.
Mm-hmm.
So my shop got lost in the... But...
So when was it that you got out of business? How long ago was
about
that?
20 years ago.
So you've been retired ever since?
Yeah. Stay home. Keep house.
You have a beautiful house.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I hope you'll come back when I got it straight again. It looked like something.
Oh, it couldn't be any straighter.
It looks beautiful. We love it here.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
It's a very comfortable house.
Can't believe that you have the little illnesses you tell us about, because you look too good to be true.
Everybody says I'm a little on the hefty side. But everybody says I don't look sick. But I've been in hospital twice in the last 6 months, I guess. And they said I had, look at the book that's decorated, excuse me, coming down over on the other side. That was been one that was in the parade. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
Finished?
Maybe he'll come by here. I don't
Wait,
know.
wait,
It
wait.
might go.
No, it's going the other way.
Oh,
Coochie, let's
wow.
finish, let's finish.
It is. You have a beautiful home and a relaxing setting.
So
Oh,
now,
I like my house. There's a lot of things I want to do to it, but and like I said, I've been sick and I haven't been able to take care of it like I wanted to. But as I was saying, I was in the hospital and they told me I had congestive heart failure. And the second time I went, they said it was. They said I had either they X-rayed me or did whatever the test. Polyp or either a stone in my gallbladder, and they were going to do surgery. But I went with my breathing. And so they took me down to, they were going to do surgery and to see if I had, give me a test to see if I had any blood clots or anything. And then they came back, these doctors got together and they said I was too high a risk on account of my breathing. And they didn't do it. But I haven't had any trouble with that since then. In fact, I don't think that was my trouble at all. When I went to the hospital, it was emphysema and the congestive heart failure.
So if you take care of it, you should be.
Huh?
So if you take care of it and you're careful.
Well, I talked to my doctor and I asked her about emphysema because I've heard of emphysema, but I didn't know how it affected you. And she said it gradually gets worse, but they can give you medication and treatment that prolongs it. But she said people that were asthmatics, like I was when I was young, said it goes faster. So I got that to worry about, but I'm gonna hang in there. I'm supposed to take those treatments 4 times a day, and I haven't had one today with a nebulizer. And I sleep with oxygen every night, and then I have that thing I'm supposed to wear, but I wore it once, and that was enough for me. I take it in the car in case I get in real trouble. I've been going to therapy classes twice a week for breathing. They called me yesterday and wanted to know why I didn't come last week. And I couldn't remember why, and I said I had a doctor's appointment. And then I got to thinking I didn't have a doctor's appointment that day. It was the day before. And I don't know, I just didn't feel good. I think it's the reason I didn't go. And I had so many things trying to do for Christmas. But I told her I'd start next week. And
After the holidays.
yeah, and I don't know how that helps you. I get on all kinds of machines, like I walk the treadmill and a lot of different things that I do. And I don't see how that helps your breathing, but they say it strengthens your breathing, so
There you go.
I do
great.
it if they tell me to.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. This has been
Wonderful.
wonderful experience for us.
My southern accent.
Absolutely.
That's the charm of it.
The whole charm of the whole thing.
Okay, thank you.